now take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. And let me say Hotep of Oregoni to my Africana Studies contemporaries and colleagues. And let me quickly say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because I don't know what time that you're looking at this offering, but certainly never good night and never ever goodbye, because personally I find goodbyes traumatizing. I said I personally find goodbyes traumatizing. My name is the Reverend Nathaniel Wayne Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles, and we're located at 8916 South Main Street, and we're worshiping with our sister church, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church. Hats off to all of our members and all of our visitors and all of our well-wishers and all of our friends. Let us persevere in good work. This is a social justice offering, and we make no bones about it, but we know how to be about it. And we try to concentrate on the environment and the economics, because that's mostly what affects us. As I've often said, your zip code impacts your health and your length of life just by your zip code. And why is that? Well, that's a man-made tragedy, as Mayor Karen Bass has said about the homeless. That is a man-made tragedy, man-made disaster, and your zip code is a man-made disaster. It impacts where your stores are located, what type of stores you can have, and that means what type of food you can buy, and at the grocery store or at the restaurants or the fast food markets. A friend of mine said she had to try to make a choice between Taco Bell and some other fast food place. I told her that's not really a choice. It's not a healthy choice. And so, but that's what impacts us so severely. And it's not only that we are set up economically to be in a zip code area where we can afford to live, but also it impacts our health, where our schools are located, how far we have to go to get to school, the quality of the education offered in that school. And for all of that 1954 Brown v. Board decision, we are still separated, and our educational system is still very poor, very bad, and with all the book bannings and all of the we don't want you to teach this in our schools that is going on, we haven't advanced very much, as you can see. There have been some bright spots, but that's all, some bright spots. For the most of us, we are still located in these zip codes where we are limited in our choice of housing, where you can pay rent, even if you can afford to pay rent, your education, where you send your kids to school, where you yourself go to school, or where you teach, and your health, naturally, so these are the main things, food, clothing, and shelter, that impact every person. And the powers that be recognize that food, clothing, and shelter is vital and most important to every person. Most of us scramble all of our lives just to keep up appearances. And for that reason, we have to get on our government or petition our government to try to make things more equitable. All right. The book of Joshua, chapter 1, I'm going to pick up my reading there today. Yes, I'm going to pick it up there. This is what it says. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. And the emphasis on this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then, notice, for then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. I don't know how many of you were listening yesterday to the Supreme Court debate on the whether or not Donald Trump should be kept off the ballot in Colorado. One of the questions the justices asked was, why should Colorado keep the rest of us from voting for whom we choose? Cogent quote, pregnant quote, salient quote that I hadn't thought about. But then that's the way our laws are structured, and what affects one affects all. And so regardless of what side of the question you may come down on, Colorado said that inasmuch as Donald Trump precipitated and instigated in a large part the January 6th insurrection, and remember, an insurrection briefly is a concentrated, forcible resistance to the authority of the government to execute the laws in at least some significant respect. I think Mr. Trump tried to say that there were no guns, but truly there were guns there. They were, as a matter of fact, Mr. Trump's people couldn't come through the metal detectors because of the guns that they had hidden and concealed on their person. And as a matter of fact, he himself, which was brought out by the January 6th Commission's hearing, told the authorities to let the people in because those are my people. So he knew they were armed, and he knew they were there for him, and that meant that if they wasn't shooting him, they were there to shoot somebody else. And that is why the state of Colorado said you cannot be on our ballot because of the 14th Amendment. That's why I read that what Joshua said. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth. Now the 14th Amendment has a clause number 3, says that no person who has a senator or other officer or office who has held office in the United States and has taken an oath to uphold the Constitution and then turn around and engaged in an effort to overthrow the government shall be able to hold an office. Of course, that's my clumsy recitation of it, but it comes closer to what the actual text of the 14th Amendment says in clause number 3. And so that 14th Amendment was written after the Civil War. And President by that time was Andrew Johnson, and he did his best to veto it and to defend it and not to uphold it or not to give it a voice, just like the Republicans are fighting to not get that border bill passed that President Biden, bless his heart, will gladly sign. But the thrust of it is that since Trump engaged in insurrection, he is not eligible, he is disqualified. And the case that guided this third clause of the 14th Amendment, you can't make this stuff up, folks. It was about a Negro man who had tried to kill somebody. And by the time he had tried to kill this man, the judge under which he was tried had, who had been formerly in the United States, but then had worked to undermine the United States in men. I think the statute said he had tried to undermine the United States by men and supplies, and there's a third thing that was indicated, but in all three he had worked to subvert the United States government. In other words, guns or muskets or cannons or bullets that should have gone to the United States government, he was in his capacity moving them over to the Southerners. You know, Virginia held the great arsenal there. The name escapes me right now, but it was a great United States government held, Harper's Ferry, that's what it was. The government held a lot of arms. That's why John Brown staged his attack to seize those weapons down there at Harper's Ferry. Of course, he was unsuccessful. But this Judge Sheffin by name, had, after the war, he had continued to be in office. And this black man's case came up before him, and this black man was convicted. And when this black man was convicted, naturally he filed a writ of habeas corpus to the higher circuit court at that time, saying that this judge was not qualified to sit on the case because he had fomented insurrection. He had taken part in insurrection. He had supported the Confederate States, in other words. And since the war was just freshly over, it ended in 1865, and whatever he had done was controlled by the February 5th, 1867 laws and the 14th Amendment, which had passed by that time. So then, quite naturally, his attorney said that this judge and this sheriff could not hold him, because the wording of the 14th Amendment says the effects of the rulings or the pronouncements of such persons or officers who were in rebellion were null and void. So he was trying to get out from under it. Interesting case. And his name was Caesar P. Griffin. That's the case that they were debating on yesterday. The Griffin case. They don't talk about the fact that he was black no more, or that he was a Negro, free Negro in Virginia. And you know Virginia was one of the leading secessionist states. That's where the capital of the Confederacy was located, Richmond. And so the case was winding its way through court, and the United States Supreme Court had to sit and make law on that case, and that's when this 14th Amendment clause was debated, and it was decided that even though this judge should not have been sitting on the case, that they were going to uphold his judgment of conviction for Mr. Griffin. Of course, Mr. Griffin was black. Otherwise, and at that time, his penitentiary, he was confined rather for 2 years. The sentence was rather for 2 years to the penitentiary. Be that as it may, now Donald Trump is trying to running for president and he's on the ballot in all of the states. They briefly debated whether he should be on the ballot here in California, but Governor Newsom decided that they would not keep him off the ballot. But only Colorado and the state of Maine had the courage to put Donald Trump off the ballot based upon the fact of his having fomented an insurrection to try to overthrow the government in some significant respect. And in his respect, as you heard him tell his people, we're going to march down to the Capitol, his words, and if you don't fight for it, your government is going to be taken away from you. You got to fight like hell. That was his words to his people on that day, and they responded. And that's why you've had 1,000 convictions. I thought I would get into that because a lot of us, matter of fact, I myself did not know much about the that clause of the 14th Amendment. And remember that the 14th Amendment was originally promulgated for the people who had been formerly enslaved. In other words, that was why the 14th Amendment was promulgated. It was for the lost, the least, and the left out, which was the descendants of, and at that time, the actual formerly enslaved. So the reason why they had to have a 14th Amendment rather than just the 5th Amendment, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, was because of slavery. Because at the time of the Constitution, the Constitution said we, the people of the United States of America, ought to form a more perfect union. And who were those people? They were the landed white people. It didn't include the majority or 3/4 of the rest of the so-called categories or classes of people. No women, naturally no person held to slavery, and no what few black people were free at that time were not actually able to vote, or if they voted, they had to vote the way that the people who allowed them to vote said so. So it was a hodgepodge, but at least there was some blacks who voted in that time of the ratification. It had to be ratified by the majority of the states in order to become law. You can have a bill, but in order for the bill to become law, certain bills require you have to submit to the people, and the states have to, being informed, decide whether they want to abide by this or not. Like I said, the due process clause of the 14th Amendment was one that was necessary in order that the formerly enslaved might be incorporated into the Constitution, because they previously were not recognized in the Constitution. And the Confederates, after they had lost the war, they fought like everything to undermine the gains, the political gains that the Negroes had made as a result of the victory of the North over the South in the Civil War. The more things change, the more they remain the same. We always try to get away from yesterday, but yesterday is always in our face. Remember, in the original Constitution, though the word slavery was not mentioned, there was an Article 4 which dealt with the fugitive slave law. And that slave law said that if I was a slave in Texas and I escaped to California by some means, if the people who owned me in Texas should find me in California, then whoever the magistrate was at that time, when the people from Texas presented their papers or their warrant that to the magistrate in California, that you would have to be given up. In other words, you couldn't. You would have to. The state of California would have to say, "Okay, Texas, you can take this Negro back because he's yours," and that type of thing. That was in the original Constitution. As a matter of fact, Alexander Stephens, when he was the vice president of the Confederacy, openly said that as far as the Constitution was concerned, you couldn't ask for a better document to promote and shelter and help the peculiar institution. And so he actually Alexander Stephens voted against. Well, told his people don't secede, but the firebrands in Georgia and the firebrands in South Carolina and the firebrands in Alabama and the firebrands in Arkansas said that told Jefferson Davis, unless you flick blood in the face of the Alabamas, they are going to go mad. That's why they went on and attacked Fort Sumter and precipitated the Civil War, because the firebrand, they call them the fire eaters, who had been fomenting for years, for generations, this secession, were dead set on having secession or seceding from the states, which Abraham Lincoln said that is the recipe for anarchy. And of course, that was not successful. And I think who was that? It's now Nikki Haley, God bless her heart, has said that Texas should secede. And remember, Texas was one of the firebrands of that wanted the secession, because they had joined the Union so that they could have slavery, because they were formerly a part of Mexico, and when Mexico abolished slavery, then Texas fought against Mexico so that they could have slavery, and so they joined the Union for that very reason, so they could have slavery. They could deal in the traffic in human bodies and hold black people by that time exclusively in bondage, and that was the way that they came into the Union, and they fought against the Union so that they could keep on having slaves. In other words, they weren't fighting for freedom, they were fighting for slavery. As a matter of fact, if you read the record of Dr. Gerald Horne and the record of many of the others, but the 1619 Project, Nicole Hannah Jones, they said that the United States was actually not founded in 1776, but in 1619 with the coming of the slave ship, the white Corsair slave ship, with 20 Negroes on board, 20 Negro slaves on board, because this is what the people of Virginia, that part of the world, needed to harvest their cotton crops or their tobacco crops, which were the staples at that time. All right, now, so then, as you see, that the 14th Amendment was vital, and originally it was only, you hear me, it was only for the formerly enslaved. slavery was, like I said, was never used in its original constitution, and it protected the formerly enslaved. All right. They probably 5 minutes. Okay, I knew that was signal was coming. Remember the opening words of the 14th Amendment said persons held to slavery born in this country are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they rely or maybe reside. In other words, before the Civil War, we were not citizens. We were just property. But after the Civil War, with the 14th Amendment, the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment, 13th Amendment abolished slavery. 14th Amendment gave us due process to the slaves and gave you citizenship rights. And the 15th Amendment to the Constitution gave you voting rights. Remember, you need all three because, like I said, prior to the end of the Civil War, we were property. Whenever that's what they went. That's what the South and Confederacy, the Upper South and the Lower South. The Upper South was Maryland, Maryland, Missouri, Kentucky, and Delaware. And the Lower South were those other firebrand states that are still causing so much hell even today. And so that's why we needed the 14th Amendment. That's why every student of history needs to learn about the 14th Amendment. And every citizen, if you don't learn nothing else about the Constitution, you need to learn that 14th Amendment and what it means and what it says. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that with the Roberts Court, which can judge 6-3 or 5-4, that they are going to say that they're going to overturn Colorado. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that because of the fact that it is a conservative court. Not because it's right, but because they are a conservative court. We got Clarence Thomas, you got Neil Gorsuch, you got the Kavanaugh man, you got the the housemaid, Miss Amy Coney Barrett, and all of those. And I'm missing one, but there are 6. But you can look up that other name for yourself. And don't leave John Roberts out because Clarence Thomas. I didn't say Clarence Thomas, did I? He's also a swing vote. He tries to act like he's fair-minded, but he's not fair-minded. And as a matter of fact, the court is not fair-minded because it reacts to the mandates of the community. All right, now my time is up, and I barely got started. But just remember, this year, as the Scripture says, this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have great success. If you know the 14th Amendment, you helped yourself a great deal. And remember, if you're working on a job and they don't want to pay you, don't waste your life, don't waste your career. Get away from them. If they don't want to pay you, don't work for them. Taraji P. Henson has a good example. Thank you, Doc. We're out of here. God bless you. God bless you. I'm looking at 3 cameras. I'm saying thank you.
My good days, all of my good days, outweigh my bad days, yes they do. Outweigh my bad days. I just say thank you, Lord. Thank